This is Taranis AcreForward, the ag industry's most thought-provoking podcast. Listen to interesting people as we go in-depth into the issues affecting crop advisors, growers, and farm communities, uncovering the truth about the ag business and using technology to prepare for the unforeseeable. Ready to explore the future? Let's dig in.
So welcome to the AcreForward podcast. My name is Mike DiPaola with Taranis. You can check us out at AcreForwardPodcast.com. I'm joined here today with Taylor and Agri Drones. Taylor, tell us a little about yourself, where you're from, and what you do with Agri Drones.
Well, thanks for having me. Beautiful day here today, too. Couldn't beat this.
Very nice.
So I'm Taylor Moreland, owner of Agri Drones. I grew up on a Missouri farm, western Missouri, a dairy farm. Ag's always been a big part of my life. Studied ag in college, worked as a Pioneer dealer after college, and really started testing drones kind of when they first started making a debut into ag. So the Phantom 4 really was, kind of came out as the savior to farms that wanted to get better data. Problem was, the drone existed, the technology behind the drone did not exist at that time, and so. But that's what led me here. Always interested to learn, about, this type of technology in ag, but really want to bring it to a point of realism, because there's a lot of overpromising sometimes when it comes to technology in ag. And so taking what's out there and then taking what you can actually do with it on the farm, I think is kind of where we have to meet in the middle sometimes.
No, I totally understand. When I joined Taranis, it was about nearly 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and technology has changed quite a bit. If you take the last, I don't know how old you are, but the last 25 years, when you look at ag tech, you're right. And whether it's overpromise, underdeliver, there's a lot of hope and a lot of people who want to bring technologies that arise from outside of ag and put it in, and there's an underestimation of just the variables, the complexity, what it's going to take. And so the expectations are high, but this is not an office job. These are biological, chemical, weather, management practice, equipment. A lot of factors go in just to get a crop started, right? And it's not, they say farming is natural. It's not. We would forage. It's an unnatural act in many ways, right? You're fighting things. There's a lot of yield robbing. But the tech has changed quite a bit just in the last 4 to 5 years, particularly with drones. What is it that you've seen with AgriSpray? What are you doing now? And how have you seen those changes impact the opportunity that you think is in front of growers today?
Yeah, so spray drones are quite a bit different than any other drone technology in ag. We're not collecting data, we're not processing information, we're not taking pictures. We're using this as an application piece of equipment, really. It's ag equipment is what these drones are. So what got me started in spray drones was about 2018 or so. And I was selling ag chemical. I was working with the farmer, and I was working with the application provider, the pilots, and I was in the middle. And it's a difficult spot to be in whenever everybody wants their fungicide on at the right time, the right place, and all at once. And it's hard to do that whenever there's a limited number of pilots. And so what I was kind of looking at doing is, okay, these drones existed at that time. They're just small, all right? They were 2.5 gallons. I thought maybe if I start here, technology's going to get better, and I can start doing this as a service for my customers, right? Well, then the next problem was everybody who sold spray drones at that time in the U.S. didn't know anything about ag. They didn't know anything about how to use these drones. They didn't know anything about how to take care of farmers, about ag chemistry, about after-sales support and service, which when you buy a piece of equipment, isn't that kind of what you want, right? And so that's kind of what got us into spray drones. That's when we first started looking at, okay, maybe we should not apply, actually focus on doing application service, but actually focus on providing this as a tool for farmers, a tool for growers and individuals to offer spray services.
So when you talk about offering spray services or these tools, tell us a little bit about your portfolio, what you're offering, what you're taking to market as AgriSpray drones.
Right. So we tested several different brands of spray drones back when we first got started. And we landed on the DJI system. And you guys are very familiar with DJI here at Taranis. The DJI is the number one drone manufacturer in the world, produce very good hardware, very good software. and it's easy to use. Okay, so we're using a DJI system. We started selling the T20, the 20-liter 5-gallon model back in January 21. And now we've gone through that. The T30, the T40 now is kind of the flagship model. That's a 10.5-gallon drone. Right now we've got a little over 1,000 drones in operation across the country. Spray drones between the T20, 30, and 40 primarily, and a few other ones in the mix there as well.
So who are your primary customers? Not by name, but type. Are you working with retailers, aerial applicators, growers, a mix? How would you describe your go-to-market and your customer base?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Whenever I first started this, I thought every farmer is going to have one of these in 5 years. Why wouldn't they? Okay, you do your own fertilizer application, you spray your own herbicide on the farm, got your own combine. Why wouldn't you do your own aerial application, right? Okay, you can't buy a helicopter and airplane, but you can buy a drone, and it's scalable. It works as an on-farm tool. Problem is, it takes time. Okay. And so a farmer who's got a couple thousand acres to spray, it might take them a couple weeks to spray it. They got to relearn how to do it every year, and so that's a problem. But it's also an opportunity, and that's where we found that our customers, especially our early customers, who still now are individuals. They're individuals who maybe they grew up in ag, or they want to work in ag and production ag somehow. But opportunities just aren't there. They can't go out and buy 500 acres, start farming. So what do? How do you return back to family farm? You have to find a niche. And so it was described to me here recently that these spray drones are the modern day hog barn. Okay, somebody wants to return back to family farm, you got to create more revenue. Hog barns do that, well, so do these drones. A spray drone is a low barrier to entry air application tool. A young person can buy one, can operate one easily, and demand for this application for air application is abundant. So starting a business, that is what most of our customers are doing. So they're individuals starting a custom application business on a small scale. And of course, followed up by farmers and then retail.
So your primary customer are individuals that want to get these assets, deploy them, and provide services for farms across the country. So I've got a few questions about how these get used or what they can cover. So today, what kind of acreage can a spray drone cover? What's being applied? What does it look like? And how long can they stay in the air? Like what can you get done with a spray drone? A whole field, a part of the field? What does that look like? And what are the most common applications do you see? Is it herbicide? Do you see any use of any other chemistries? How do you look at that?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to wrap your head around this if you're kind of not very familiar with the technology and how it works, because it's very different than any other piece of equipment, application equipment that people in ag have used. So our biggest drone is 10.5 gallons right now. We've tested out other models that are up to 17 gallon. But really, efficiency on these drones is going to be on the T40, for instance, between 40 and 45 acres per hour at a 2-gallon breaker rate. That's different. Most guys on herbicide, if they're doing a ground rig, application, they're 10-gallon, 20-gallon per acre. And with these drones, we're doing 2-gallon. But that is exactly what air application, is done at primarily. Fungicide across the Midwest, if you're doing fungicide on corn, you're probably doing a 2-gallon breaker rate with the helicopter or the airplane. That's what drones are doing. And so we look at what products are being applied. It is, it's fungicide on corn. You look at, I would say, majority of people who buy a drone, it's fungicide, insecticide on corn.
So fungicide and insecticide are the primary drivers. And is that a whole acre solution? Are they varying that in any way? So then the question for you is, how do they know which fields to prioritize, what's happening, if it's effective? Obviously, we have a role to play in that, but just curious, how do you demonstrate the need, but also that you cured the issue, right? How do you show the efficacy in a way that makes that service even more valuable year after year?
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this. The technology exists to be very efficient in agriculture through, collection of data. But there's also got to be a mindset shift on the grower level, the farmer level. What farmers are used to is whole field application, right? on fungicide, insecticide. On the corn crop, that's what the helicopter airplanes do, and so that's what the majority of guys are doing on the spray drones is just whole field blanket application. So how you get the efficiency is just multiple flights, obviously, per hour. But they are very capable of doing spot application. They're very capable of doing variable rate application. And I think, with technologies like what Taranis has, we're going to see a lot more of that with these drones, where we are treating every square foot differently as opposed to every acre, or whole field differently.
It's probably not for this episode, but getting into varying things like fungicides, insecticides, you think about resistance and stewarding your chemistries, make sure that you preserve the mode and sites of action. There's lots of questions, but herbicides, one where you can do selective spray, especially if something's getting out of control. You have a particular weed that's particularly nasty that you need to eradicate early. I understand, obviously, with our AcreForward solutions, we see that. We know exactly where it is. We have maps that you guys can use, that your people can use. Absent that, that's pretty hard to do, especially when the crop starts to get up. Do you see the herbicide targeted spray with drones growing in this market? And, without our technology that Taranis brings, how do you know where to go with these things? I'm wondering if that's why fungicides and insecticides make a little bit more sense today. But I think tomorrow, I think you see rescue sprays and targeted sprays start to change in herbicides once we know more about what's happening on the acre. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's a few things that have to change for wider adoption of herbicide, use with drones. And, the reason the fungicide is being, is primary use is because everybody's comfortable with it, it works with an aerial application. So first off, guys have to understand that you don't need a high volume to get good coverage. Drone provides coverage with low volume, high concentration, and then air movement. Okay, and then we look at labels for herbicides. Not a lot of herbicides are applied aerially. Some are not labeled to be applied aerially. That's what drones do. These labels were written for helicopters and airplanes. So labels need to change a bit for some wider adoption. And then we look especially like the using technology like Taranis or any weed identification technology. The workflow has to get better. To where we can go from a mapping drone to software to the spray drone seamlessly. And right now, that's not super seamless. It's getting better for sure, but that's got to be a kind of a seamless workflow.
Well, the good news for you is we do have APIs, and our maps export into really clean shape files. Not selling you here, but I know that that's a primary use case for us across the globe. The labels, these issues need to be dealt with because some of the heights that you could theoretically work at and deal with are very, very different than typical aerial application. I want to come back to something because I didn't know this, but drone applications are much more efficient. You can use a lower rate than what you would do from a helicopter or airplane. Is that correct?
All right, I may have misspoke there.
That's all right.
Yeah. So lower volume than like a ground rig.
Okay.
Yeah, and
why is that?
Okay, so lower volume, not lower AI. I got to make a distinction here. Okay, so we're doing 10 gallons an acre with a ground rig, and a quart of that is chemical, let's just say. We're still doing quart of chemical with a drone per acre, but 2-gallon carrier total volume. So the difference in AI has not changed.
Okay.
It is a difference in the way that the technology provides coverage. So ground rig provides coverage with volume. Okay, that's why you look at a fungicide label for ground applied, ground based equipment is 20 gallons per acre typically in row crop. It's the same label, 2 gallons per acre from the air. Why is that? Is it that aerial applicators are able to get better coverage 2 gallon? No, it's because you can't carry 20 gallon per acre even with helicopter and airplane. Now we look at a drone. A drone uses smaller droplets. It uses rotor wash, and so the nozzles are located underneath the propellers. And so it's pushing product down, it's disturbing the crop canopy, and it's able to provide coverage through air, not through volume.
I think that's pretty interesting. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. But these are concepts probably we don't think about until we get out there. The technology gets better, it gets more ubiquitous. I'm sure there are studies and things that we can look at and third parties that evaluate the efficacy of these things. I'm sure there's lots of retailers that do this and big, large companies on their R&D farms. Not sure if you have any collaborations with them yet, but these are areas where I think anyone listening to this, the world is changing. How we apply, the methods we use, the rates we use, how we preserve our technologies. Once we know more about what's happening on the acre, we can get a lot more prescriptive with the solutions. And we have different tools today than we did even 4 years ago. So what's the battery life look like? How have you, we know what we believe with that. We've seen it. We used to make our own drones. But just how long is AcreForward in existence, Taylor?
So we've been testing spray drones since 2018.
Since 2018, that's long enough. So what have you seen just in the energy and the battery, kind of the capability to take a payload and to actually stay on the acre for a longer period of time? What have you guys seen from a spray perspective?
Sure. Well, I'm gonna speak to something you just said before, then we'll go back to batteries.
Sure.
So on the research and whatnot, we do work with universities. The issue is the demand for this technology is outpacing, what the data is coming back in, for it. It's primarily word of mouth. It's, we had 100 customers the first year, and they proved that it worked. Their neighbors saw it work, and so next year, through some testing at universities, through our own testing, and a lot of word of mouth, we grew threefold. Same thing happened again this past year, and so that's what we're seeing now is people are demanding this. Farmers are demanding this. They know that it works. Of course, we do have to have research to back some of this stuff up, and so we are working on that with different university programs, different universities.
So we'll come back to the energy and the battery thing in a minute because there's also non-electrical options in this world too. But I want to talk a little bit about, since you came back to the university piece, I think that's a really good answer. Word of mouth. Farmers seeing this. They want it. Why? Cheaper, better, results. What's the main driver? What's in it for me if I'm a grower? What's making me talk about it? What's making me sign up year after year?
Tar spot, that's a big one. So growers understand that the fungicides have gotten better. Okay, we know that. We know that fungicides over the past decade have tremendously improved, especially over the past 5 years, it seems like. Where we've got 3 mode of action fungicides that, they can almost guarantee ROI every year. So guys want to put them on every year. Now, timing is incredibly important, right? Timing for fungicide is incredibly important. And if you're reliant on someone else to provide you with perfect timing, you're probably not going to get it, right? And so that's been the biggest driver right there. The other part there is, like we go back to the beginning, we talk about this being opportunity. Our mission statement is empowering rural America with new opportunities. And we have seen, demand by young people, who see this as an opportunity. And so they're demanding it for that reason too. So those are the 2 biggest factors there, I would say, on why we're seeing this in high demand, why we're seeing people adopt this at higher rates than the data can keep up with, and the FAA can keep up with, and the EPA can keep up with.
Yeah, we have a very similar mission statement and vision in how we look at creating prosperity. We look at just the number of people that are able to fly today. It's really the supply of people, individuals that can operate drones and UAVs in agriculture is growing every year. We saw that trend coming. So for the past, I'd say 4 years for Taranis, we've been able to cover millions of acres, right? There's many, many more people. It's new jobs. It's really exciting. Obviously, that's been a lift, I think, for your businesses as well. I think if a grower really wants to get a look, word of mouth is great, and they should. But any grower that's currently using AcreForward crop intelligence from their retailer or cooperative of choice already has a view of their acre. They already know in advance what they need to do for next year, and they know how to solve things that they're seeing during the season, early warning, which fields to even go to begin with. So I think it's a natural progression to understand and take that level of capability and move it into a more targeted application, something that's a little bit quicker for them, a little easier to get to. And it sounds to me like what you're sharing here is if I want it sprayed on my acre, it's getting easier and easier to find services and people to do that. That might even outpace other more traditional options if I want it at a particular time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've seen the world change. I think that's, we talk a lot about drones, but I think the bet that we made, and it sounds like the bet that you've made, we knew that the supply of talented people that wanted to work in these communities and actually help solve problems and be part of this were coming. And we saw it, so we built around that, right? That's why we have the network that we have. But also when you look at what the drones can do, 5 or 6 years ago, the payload that you can deal with today and the ability to do what you do didn't exist. How do you look at the energy capability, the capacity of these drones to stay in the air, carry a payload? How have you seen that change, and what do you think is going to happen going forward?
Back to the battery question. It's usually the first question everybody asks whenever they come by our booth. How long does the battery last?
Yeah.
And, it's natural to think about drones, think about batteries, and have, kind of some concern, especially on the ag side, when it's a very foreign concept, right? This is the first piece of ag equipment that is autonomous, flies, and is battery powered that is being widely adopted. There's 3 big changes here. Okay, so on the batteries, spray drones are the opposite of sensor drones, or camera drones. You don't need long flights. What you need is short flights, fast discharge, fast recharge, high payload. Okay?
Because you're refilling the chemistry and then going back out, right?
Absolutely.
Like a hummingbird.
You're
going back all the time.
Bingo. Yeah, you got it. And so they have big batteries on them, but it doesn't mean they last very long. So the T40 with a full tank hovering, the T40 is probably only going to last about 7 minutes of flight time. Now you're going to discharge that payload, right, as you spray. And so as you discharge the payload, flight time increases. So typically you're going to come back, you're going to scratch your tank, you're probably going to have about 50% battery left. And so you're going to go ahead and swap that battery every time you fill that tank. Every 6 or 8 minutes, the drone comes back to you, you swap that battery, you fill the tank at the same time, send it back off there. So it's really important, this fast recharge time. So that's where they've done a great job over the past couple of years, especially, in making these batteries, these chargers, so that with the generator on site, you can recharge them as fast as the drone uses them. And just keep swapping all day long. That's how you get your whole field all day long. We've got one of our clients, they're running teams of 4 people, 2 T40s per team, and they're averaging 700 acres per day doing fungicide work.
Yeah, we've got a lot of friends and partners that do this. They use various technologies to do so, but this is why farmers everywhere should look for high touch, high service, and support to do this properly, because you're right, you're more in a sprint mode. And then when we're doing these things, we have capabilities to do them without stopping, forward motion compensation. We have other capabilities where we can use the latest in technology, we understand, but it's a marathon because we're out there, we're sensing, we're seeing a lot that you can't see on your own. So that's why I wanted to tease out the conversation for those that listen to this that are really into the drones, is the way this equipment gets used and the concerns around how to do it best. The battery life question isn't the key question. What problem are you trying to solve? And how is this going to be better year after year? Because what I do know is the capacity and the capability to do what you're just talking about has dramatically changed inside the last 4 or 5 years. And it's going to continue to do so. The tech that's coming out with batteries, military usually gets the first look. We get a look at some of those things around the world, and we know that capacity is getting better and better. And once the use cases are understood, they design around these frameworks, right? But there's a lot to do and to know if you're going to do this. But it's gotten a lot easier since you started in 2018. Significantly so, wouldn't you say?
Yes, most definitely. So just, drones getting bigger. And the software, that's probably the biggest thing. A 20-liter, 5-gallon drone is going to fit a lot of operations, frankly. But that's what we started with. The software wasn't great. The software is a lot better now. That workflow we talked about, that workflow just on the drone, spray drone side, is a lot better now than it used to be. So that, along with battery technology and payload. I don't think drones are going to get that much bigger, though. Spray drones, at least on battery technology, current battery technology, though. We're kind of already seeing that, actually.
I've seen a few internal combustion options that have been out there. There's some interest. They look like helicopters. hundreds of pounds, and that maybe that's where things go. We've had debates even internally as we look at our company. We can use airplanes. We do that in some other countries at scale. You can still see the bugs in the leaves and count the plants, see the species, just like we do from drones. We've been very adaptable. I think it'll be interesting to see how application changes and how things get more autonomous and get easier to use. Somebody wants to learn a little bit more about AgriSpray. Where do they go, Taylor? How do they do that?
The best place to learn about AgriSpray is probably our YouTube page. So we post a lot of videos. We're really big on knowledge and education in this industry. And so AgriSpray drones, AGRI spray drones at YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at the same handle, and then AcreForwardDrones.com.
So AcreSprayDrones.com. Our listeners know to go to AcreForwardPodcast.com. They'll check us out at YouTube, all the places. We'll have some links in our show notes. Before we kind of leave off, because we're going to reconvene, I think, do another podcast here if you're willing to in the future, get a little more technical for those that want to, but then have another one that we talk a little bit more about the actual application and the agronomics and what's there, because I think there's a lot of math around this that makes sense. We haven't had time to get to that today, but it's good to have this opportunity at Farm Progress to talk about these things, talk about where it's going, because I'm not sure that everyone is aware of the possibilities that are out there just to know what's on the acre and then solve the problem with new tools. So I really want to just say thank you to have you on, and really appreciate you being here. And we want all of our customers and our listeners to go check you out at AgriSprayDrones.com. Taylor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.